Hey, would you like your child to retire a tax-free millionaire? Well, believe it or not, there's a very popular Forbes article that describes exactly how to do that. And we are going to be talking about that on this week's edition of the State of Greater Western New York Report, which as always is brought to you by...
Each week, our community makes history. Each week, you make history. And each week, there's only one source to turn to for the first take on history. You know what that is? Subscribe to the Sentinel right now to discover the history being made in your own backyard. The Bend and Honey Lake Falls Lima Sentinel. More than just your news, it's your history. Welcome, everyone, to this edition of the State of Greater Western New York Report. Join us each episode as we discuss fantastic topics ranging from history to science to the strange and the wonderful, as well as the treasured spirit with which our region has infused America. We challenge you to consider all things Greater Western New York, from our region's very beginnings to how it inspires, how it empowers, and why it is so admired. Here's the host of the State of Greater Western New York Report, Chris Carosa.
Hi there, and welcome to today's edition of the State of Greater Western New York Report. We've got a very special edition, and we're going to be talking about an article that appeared in Forbes.com about a month ago that got over 250,000 views. What was it about, and why was it so interesting? It was about a new law that came into effect that was signed last December that allows parents to create Child IRAs from 529 plans. So let's talk a little bit about that. You can't do that right now. It takes effect next year, but you have to start planning for it now because there's some delays into it. We'll get into it as we go over the law. So let's go first and just take a look at what the basics are when it comes to 529 plans. 529 plans started maybe 20, well, almost a quarter century ago, actually. They actually started in individual states. So it's a hodgepodge of laws. And you might see that in what you're looking at when you look at 529 plans. In fact, if you go to the internet and search 529 plans, you'll see them listed by state. Now, there was a federal law that recognized 529 plans, and that's part of what's going on today. But here are the basics of 529 plans. Essentially, anybody can contribute a 529 plan. You establish it for a specific beneficiary. So parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, neighbors, friends, somebody you met on the street, anybody can contribute to a 529 plan where the beneficiary is a specific child. So if you have a 529 plan, you could put the money in and name your child as the primary beneficiary. Now, here's the thing about 529 plans. You can only use them for educational purposes for the most part. And what happens is you can see from the lifetime contribution limits that you can accumulate a lot of money in these plans. From $235,000 to more than $500,000. Why is there that spread? It's because what I said. Each state has its own rules and its own limitations. What isn't really a limitation on a state basis is what's your maximum contribution? What can it be? It's limited to what your gifting allowance is. And right now, as of 2023, that's $17,000 per person. So that's the most you can put into a 529 plan in any year. However, anybody could put into the plan. So if you had 10 people putting in $17,000 in 1 year, that's $170,000 in 1 year going into this 529 plan. Now, there's a lifetime contribution limit of what you could put into these 529 plans, which I just told you about. So there's a maximum on what you can have contributed to the plans. But once you contribute that maximum, that plan is allowed to grow. And again, the only way you can use that money is for educational purposes, again, for the most part. What happens if you have money left over? Are you stuck? Not really, because what you can do is you can change beneficiaries. It could go from one person to another person, from your oldest child to your next oldest child, for example. And that way you can continue to contribute to the 529 plan, or you can continue to allow it grow and use up the money for educational purposes. You can even use it for yourself. Just name yourself as a beneficiary if you're going back to school. So there is some flexibility with these 529 plans, but they're not necessarily going to give you exactly what you're looking for in terms of, say, using that money or keeping that money used forever. So what does that mean to you? It means that there's a chance that the money can be left over, that it dies in the 529 plan. Well, you could take it out. There are penalties for taking it out, so it won't actually die, but you'll take it out and you'll take the penalties. So that's 529 plans. That's the basics of 529 plans. Now, there's this other savings mechanism that you would use for your child. It's called a Child IRA. While the 529 plans, the primary objective is to allow you to save for college, the Child IRA allows your child to save for his or her retirement. It's a different objective. You have a much longer time frame, but you have more strict limitations on how you can contribute to the Child IRA. So let's go over some basics there. Here's the biggest restriction. The child must have earned income. Just like your own IRA, you have to have earned income in order to contribute to it. Same thing with your child. Now, basically, a Child IRA is like a regular IRA. However, it is for the child. It's for a minor child. So it could be called a minor IRA. It could be called a custodial IRA. Different banks and brokers have different names for it, but it is essentially a Child IRA. It's an IRA for a child. Here's how you know that it's really a Child IRA. By law, again, in most states, you can't enter into a contract until you're of age, until you're 18 or older. So if the parent has to sign the paperwork to open up the IRA, it's a Child IRA. Now, that doesn't mean that the parent owns the IRA. The parent is sort of like the custodian or guardian for that child until that child reaches the age of 18. But the child is in the name of, the Child IRA is in the name of that child, which means that the parent can't take the money out and use it for the parent's good. It has to only be used for the child. So this is how you set up a Child IRA, but the child still has to work. And it could be any sort of jobs. I think we've talked about this in the past. I've written a couple of books about it. You can see them on Amazon if you're interested. But it tells you what the child can do in terms of work, what's real work and what's not real work that can go into funding a Child IRA. Now, like a regular IRA, there are really no lifetime contribution limits. There are, however, annual contribution limits. Right now, this year, 2023, that annual contribution limit is $6,500. And here's the real power of these Child IRAs. If you max out on your savings, so you max out that $6,500, $6,500 every year from ages 13 to ages 18. So by the time they graduate from high school, they've contributed to these IRAs every year, $6,500, and then stop. No more contributions when they graduate from high school. They're really bad investors. They only earn 8% a year annually on average. The average annual return for that length of time is about 11%. So 8% is almost 3% less than what you see in the average annual return. That's a pretty bad return over time. Even if you're that bad, when you retire at age 70, because that's probably going to be the retirement age when your children retire, those assets, those little bit of assets that were saved during their high school years, primarily during their teenage years, have now grown in excess of $2.5 million. So there's interesting tricks that you can do with child IRAs. Again, that's not the scope of this particular discussion right now. We're talking about this new law and how it impacts both 529 plans and child IRAs. There are some rules that you have to follow if you're going to take advantage of this. First, let me tell you a little bit more about what this law is. This law is called Secure Act 2.0. It's a pretty lengthy law, and in a portion of that law, it talks about retirement plans and what you can do with retirement plans. So that's the main focus of the law. But there's a little snippet that talks about 529 plans. And what it does is it addresses the concern about the penalties issued with the excess monies. If you take out that excess money in the 529 plan, you pay a penalty. So the law says, all right, here's a way you can take it out without paying a penalty. By the way, this fear of excess money is one of the things that holds back parents and everybody else from establishing 529 plans. They don't know if they're going to need the money. What if their kid gets a scholarship, a merit scholarship, or an athletic scholarship, any sort of scholarship? They don't need the money to pay for college. What if the kid doesn't go to school? You don't need the money for that either. So you're stuck with this pot of money that right now you can't do anything with. Well, this new law, Secure Act 2.0, now allows you to at least do something with a portion of that money. And we'll go over what those details are immediately. So it's called a 529 plan to Roth Child IRA conversion. That's what we're going to be talking about. Technically, you don't have to be a child. You could do this kind of conversion as an adult. What you do is you take this excess money and you convert it not to a regular tax-exempt IRA, the one where you get to take the deduction from your account, but to a Roth IRA, so it can grow tax-free. Now, this law doesn't take effect until next year, 2024. So you can't begin to convert excess monies from 529 plans into Roth IRAs until 2024. But that doesn't mean you can't start thinking about this now. Why? Why is this important? It's important because the conversion cannot occur until the 529 plan has been in existence for 15 years. So you have to really plan ahead if you're going to want to do this. There's also a lifetime conversion limit. That means that you can't convert more than $35,000 from a 529 plan to a child IRA. It doesn't really fully address the fear of having too much money, but it's a start. And in fact, it's not just a start, but it now turns a 529 plan into a more comprehensive planning tool for your child. It's a financial planning tool that not only addresses your child's education, but also your child's retirement. Both of those things can be addressed with this one vehicle. That is the change. That's what's very significant. And that is something that you're going to have to start incorporating into your planning now, because you have to wait 15 years before this conversion can occur. By the way, you are also limited to what you can contribute annually. So this is a conversion. So this is not like a traditional IRA to Roth IRA conversion where you can pretty much convert almost anything, any amount, from the old IRA to the Roth IRA. Here, you can only contribute or convert what the annual contribution maximum is. So right now, that maximum is $6,500 a year. It goes up regularly. It just went up from last year to this year, 2023. So you have to, monitor that to see what it is in 15 years or however many years it is until you start converting. By the way, the 15-year period doesn't start counting now. If you started the 529 plan 15 years ago, next year you can start converting it if there's excess monies in it. And how do you define excess monies? It's not really defined. It's really up to you. If you think there's too much money in it, you can start converting it into a 529, from a 529 plan into a child IRA right now. So the idea here is we've got this thing set up so you can begin this conversion process in as early as next year, but you do have to prepare for it. So what you want to do is, well, I'm going to go over that next. Right now, we're going to take a little bit of a break. When I come back, I'll give you the 5 steps that you need to do to convert this to make your child retire a tax-free millionaire. We'll be right back.
Through the mists of time, nature and man have both created and buried treasures beyond the imagination. With the ages, these riches slowly dissolve into mere myths until they are forever forgotten. But there are those brave souls who tirelessly cling to the truth, ever seeking to discover the undiscovered, to reveal what has always been there, to uncover the hidden gems of a land thought forsaken but loved by millions. 50 Hidden Gems of Greater Western New York. Discover the secrets in your own backyard. Buy your copy now at 50hiddengems.com.
Welcome back. We're talking about how to turn your child into a tax-free millionaire when your child retires in ever so many years. And it's really about this new law that comes from Secure Act 2.0 that allows you to convert up to $35,000 in excess monies in your child's 529 plan to a child Roth IRA. Why is that significant? A Roth IRA accumulates tax-free. When you take the money out, it also comes out tax-free. So this Roth IRA is what turns your child into a tax-free multimillionaire, potentially, if you do this right. If you do what I'm about to tell you, it'll do it. It's really simple. The math is virtually limited there, so you don't have to know too much about the math, but you just have to have the discipline to do it. I'm going to give you the 5 steps, but I'm going to give you them in reverse order because they're a little easier to understand why you're doing all the steps you're doing if you start at the end. So let's go with step 5. Step 5 tells you that you can only convert the $35,000 from the 529 plan to the child IRA. So that's going to be your mission. Your mission is going to be to transfer that $35,000 from the 529 plan to the Roth IRA that you created in your child's IRA. Goal, therefore, is to save $35,000 in excess funds so that it can be converted to your child's IRA. Remember that number, $35,000. That's step 5. That's really the end. That's where you're getting to at the end. Step 4. We're not skipping that far ahead. Step 4, the step prior to step 5. Again, what is your current IRA contribution limit? That's $6,500. That means right now, in order to convert that $35,000 over from a 529 to a child IRA, it's going to take you 6 years. The first 5 years, you do $6,500, and the 6th year, you do $2,500. So it takes you that long to convert the entire $35,000. Now, the interesting thing is that you don't really have to save or put in the $35,000 right away to get there. All you need to do is have enough saved so at the end of the 6th year, you will have had the $35,000 in total to convert. So how do we do that? And that is step 3. So it takes you 6 years to reach $35,000 in excess 529 savings. Now, assuming a treasury yield, a 5-year treasury yield of 3.65%, that means that you'll need to have $31,250 at the first year, by the first year of your conversion. If you invest that remaining money into the 5-year treasury that yields 3.65%, you'll be able to generate $35,000 over the remaining 5 years or 6 years, so that you'll be able to hit that target. So in the last year, you'll be able to have converted fully the $35,000. All right, so this is the math part. It's a little hard. If you want to skip the math, then just don't even worry about it. Just have the $35,000 in there by the time that you start the conversion process. Now, what's step 2? What happens before this? Well, step 2 really concerns itself with how do you get to this. In this case, I'm still using the $31,250. How do you get to that number by the 15th year of the 529 plan? Because remember, you cannot start the conversion until you reach that 15th year in the 529 plan. Now, assuming an annual return rate, again, of 8%, you're a bad investor. You're only getting 8%. Actually, for this shorter amount of time, 8% is more reasonable. If you put in a lump sum contribution in the beginning of the 15-year period of $9,850, at 8%, that'll grow to the $31,250. If you don't want to put a lump sum in, and you want to do it on an annual contribution basis, it's less than $100 a month. It's $1,030 a year is what you're going to have to be putting in over the 15 years, and that'll stretch out and grow to the $31,250 that you need by the 15th year when the conversion begins. All right, so now here's where the rubber meets the road. Step 1. I'm going to show you step 1 in 2 parts, because there's the real part, and then there's the part that if you're very aggressive and very disciplined, what you can do. So we're going to start with the real part. The real part is based on the average age when parents start 529 plans for their children. According to Morningstar, the average age is 7. So typically, by the age of 7, parents will have started a 529 plan for their child. What does that mean in terms of conversion? It means you cannot convert until age 22. That's 15 years. At age 22, usually you're out of college. You're just about ready to get out of college. So in fact, you won't be needing that 529 money anymore, unless you go to graduate school, I guess. But you'll know for sure kind of what your excess funds are. Let me repeat what I said before. Right now, it doesn't appear that excess funds are defined. So you can say anything is excess in your mind if that's true. At age 7, you start the conversion at age 22, which means it completes at age 29. The total growth of that conversion when the child retires at age 70, again, assuming 8% annual growth, is $1.3 million. This is a Roth IRA for your child, which means that the money comes out tax-free. That $1.3 million is worth a heck of a lot more than $1.3 million in your 401k plan that you put in there before taxes. So you took the deductions out of it. So this is pretty big. $1.3 million tax-free for retirement is a pretty big sum. But wait, it gets better. Let's assume that you're a very smart parent, and your grandparent, by the way, because don't forget, grandparents can do this too. with 529 plans. And you set up a 529 plan when the child is born. So that means conversions can start at age 15. Now, how do you know if the money is excess? Well, you'll have a pretty good idea of what you'll need for college by that age. So it's you could pretty much guess what that excess amount is. And if you do it right, you'll have plenty of money in the 529 plan, where the $35,000 conversion cap represents just a small portion of the 529 plan. Let's say you start converting at age 15, which is what you can do if you open up the plan when the child was born. You complete the conversion by age 22. Going back to our retirement age of 70, assuming that 8% growth rate, now you have $2.1 million. So that's a multi-million dollar tax-free millionaire. Your child will retire at that point in that way. So this is the power of compounding. It really shows you what it is. It also shows you the power of having a 529 plan at an early age and using it with the idea that you're going to be saving it for not just college, but also for retirement. And that's a very, very big thing. That's a change from what it was just a few months ago. Hopefully, that will encourage people to start 529 plans, not just for college, but also to begin thinking of the child's retirement. Because look, hey, anyone believe that Social Security is going to be around when your child retires? If you do, that makes you a lot different than most people. Most people feel that Social Security is just going to be going away and you can't really rely on it. Now, maybe in your lifetime, you'll still be able to benefit from Social Security, but the risk grows as the child, for your child's generation. And this is one way to help stave that off. So think about doing this. If you want more information, I invite you to go to childira.com. You can sign up for the periodic newsletter. And by periodic, I think it maybe once or twice a year at this point. There's not a whole lot of news that comes out of it, but there's reminder notes to start thinking about child IRAs, especially this time of year and in the summer when most children are working. So that's a very important thing. I'm just checking to see if there's any questions there. We did have one question that really pertains to the child IRA as a unit in of itself, not necessarily with a conversion. So that's, like I said before, it's a little bit more complicated to get into how do you set up a child IRA. Maybe we'll do that a little bit later if people are interested in it. But for now, focus on the 529 plan and how you can use that to help save for your child's retirement and education at the same time. If you want to be a member of the live audience and be able to ask questions of our guests, or me if there are no guests, feel free to go to stateof.greaterwesternnewyork.com. Remember, we cover a variety of topics, and the day that the show is aired, which is usually Thursdays at noon, you'll get an email that'll give you the exact link so that you can be a member of the live studio audience, and that's the way that you can ask questions. So just seeing there's no other questions, and we're at the time when it's really time to start breaking things up. Let us thank you all for being here today and wish you all a great weekend. We'll see you all next week.